If your child is anxious, learn to decrease their anxiety by recognizing anxiety's patterns. Anxiety's patterns are easy to see once you know the signs. There's some kind of triggering situation followed by worrisome thoughts, which result in emotional and physical distress. For example, your child has to give a presentation in front of the class and worries that everyone's going to laugh at them. This causes them to get nervous, maybe have a stomach ache or a headache. So what is anxiety's pattern? In this case, it's the worrisome thoughts your child has about everyone laughing at them. In this video, I provide 10 anxiety patterns to be on the lookout for, so you and your child can find different ways to relate to these worrisome thoughts and better tolerate their anxiety. Hi and hello! Welcome to Nurturing Youth Counseling. I'm Colette, a licensed professional counselor partnering with you in your child's social and emotional development. I answer questions about children's mental health and provide skills that I've learned while in private practice and with my own children. Come journey along with me on this roller coaster ride of life that we call parenting. Let's jump into identifying anxiety's patterns. Number 1, all or nothing thinking. This is when you give yourself only two options, and one is good and one is bad. People who are perfectionists usually tend to think this way. You're unable to see the middle ground or the different perspectives to a situation. Because of this, you may view yourself or others negatively. You use words like always, never, impossible, failure. You might refuse to start something unless you get everything right first, or refuse to do it altogether because you're not sure of the outcome. You may ignore positive things even if they're present, struggle to receive feedback from others, and be too hard on yourself. Hold yourself to a really high level that's not really realistic. What all or nothing thinking could look like is setting a New Year's resolution to go to the gym 3 times a week. Well, that first week you only make it 1 time because of a very busy, hectic schedule. Rather than being flexible, you say, I didn't make my goal of 3 days a week, so I'm giving up. Or it could look like a child missing 1 question on a test, and instead of looking at all the answers they got correct, they focus on that one that they got wrong. Number 2, overgeneralization. This is when you take one negative event or detail about a situation and generalize it. This means you make it true for every experience you have moving forward. You might say, I never do anything right, or no one ever listens. This might look like going to a restaurant in a new place and having some bad food. So generalizing that all the restaurants in that area just don't know how to cook food well. It could also look like a friend not hanging out with your child, and then they believe that no one ever wants to hang out with them. Number 3, emotional reasoning. This is where you feel something and think it must be true, even when there's no evidence to support that thought. I was sad at work today, so I must be a sad person. Certainly it's not true, but you might feel it in that moment and get wrapped up in your emotions, leading you to come to unreasonable conclusions about yourself. You may experience strong emotions without any proof, say or do something you feel regretful about later on, believe that things will be negative in the future based on how you're feeling in that moment, and do things that negatively affect you and others due to your emotions maybe getting a little out of hand. This could look like you feeling lonely, so you believe that no one likes you. Or you could be afraid to go on elevators, and because of that fear of going on elevators, you believe that elevators are a dangerous place to be. Your child could wake up feeling anxious, and because they feel anxious, they believe or think that school is going to be a terrible place to be today, or that something terrible is going to happen. Number 4, catastrophizing. This is taking a problem and blowing it up out of proportion and always fearing the worst. This usually happens when we're trying to accomplish something and it's just not going our way. We get frustrated, and as a result, we make the problem a bigger deal than it actually is, although it doesn't feel that way in the moment. This could look like you giving a presentation at your work that you think wasn't a perfect presentation. You didn't do your absolute best. So now you're worried that your boss is going to fire you. This could also look like your child texting a friend and not getting a text back right away. So your child assumes that the friend no longer wants to be friends. Number 5, mentally filtering. This is only seeing the negative parts of a situation rather than acknowledging the positive or neutral parts. If you got 7 compliments today but heard one negative comment about yourself, it's easy to fall in the trap and get focused on that one negative comment. We tend to quite literally filter out all the positives that we hear, or at least downplay them. This is very true for online reviews. People are more apt to go on and leave a review if they have a complaint rather than to leave a compliment. When you're mentally filtering, you're noticing everything that's negative. You may have heightened stress or anxiety or depression. You may have self-defeating thoughts or believe you're not good enough. When you have a positive accomplishment, you downplay it or make it not a big deal. This could look like being at a social engagement with friends and having lots of positive conversations, and maybe one conversation that doesn't go so well. You focus with horror on that one conversation that doesn't go so well. Or your child completes a project and receives a lot of positive feedback, but they notice that they spelled one person's name wrong, and they focus on that misspelling rather than all the positive comments they're getting. Number 6, disqualifying the positive. While filtering ignores the positives, this thought pattern turns the positives into negative thoughts. For example, you travel to a dream destination, but instead of appreciating the beautiful scenery, the culture, the delicious food, you point everything that was off. The weight of the luggage caused you to have to pay more, the delayed transportation, not being able to speak the local language. The behaviors that arise from discounting the positives may include having difficulty accepting praise, attributing all your hard work and accomplishments to luck, telling yourself you're just not good enough, setting low expectations about everything. This could look like you being in a car accident, a light fender bender, and instead of looking at the positives and saying, oh, I'm glad it wasn't horrible and nobody got hurt, being distraught to the damage to your car. For your child, they could be participating in a fundraiser like a car wash. The weather is projected to be rather rainy, which would ruin the car wash. But they end up having a beautiful sunny day, and your child comes back from the event complaining that it was too sunny and hot out. Number 7, labeling. This is when you put a negative label on yourself or someone else, so you can no longer see the person behind that negative label. When you lock someone in place like that, your understanding and thought process becomes rigid, leaving no wiggle room to see yourself or another person differently. This could look like you getting stuck in traffic on the way to picking up your child. Because you run a few minutes late, you label yourself a terrible parent. Your child could be very graceful and elegant and maybe trips in the hall one day, labeling themselves as clumsy for tripping the one time. Number 8, jumping to conclusions. This is where you think you know what others feel about you, and you make predictions on the future because of that thought. Sometimes people call this mind reading and fortune telling. Mind reading is when you assume you know what another person is thinking and that they're thinking negatively about you. This could be you having a conversation with someone and noticing that they're not really focused on you. Your thoughts start to race and think, oh, this person doesn't like me, they don't want to spend time with me, when in reality, the other person might not have any problems with you and be stressed on something completely unrelated to you. Fortune telling is more predicting that something's going to turn out in a negative way. This can be a pessimistic way of viewing the future, and it can impact your behavior, making the event you're fortune telling more likely to turn out badly. Fortune telling is kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So this could look like your child working hard to get ready for the spelling bee. They don't make it very far. And so they start fortune telling their future about how they're not going to be able to spell things in the future or win any other competitions. And they're so focused on being negative that it actually becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy when they participate in another spelling test and they do poorly. Number 9, should or ought tos. This is when you think in definite terms, shoulds and musts, leaving little wiggle room for any flexibility. Listen for the shoulds, musts, oughts in these examples. I should be able to handle this problem. I ought to know better. I must get everything done by tonight. You ought to be more in control of your feelings. You must be an honor roll student. You ought to be grateful for what we've given you. Again, little wiggle room for flexibility, which would allow things to change rather than stay permanent. Number 10, personalization. This is where you believe things are connected to you, even though you have nothing to do with the situation. This is where you've accepted blame for something, when in reality, it has nothing to do with you. Or it may be completely out of your control. This could look like you thinking your friends aren't having a good time when you're all out to dinner, and that it's your fault. This could look like a child believing that if they didn't demand so much from their parents, they would still be together. And those are the 10 anxiety patterns to be aware of. Recognizing these 10 anxiety patterns allows you to help your child by simply being aware of their worrisome thoughts. A good first step in decreasing anxiety's power and impact. The next step would be to help your child find a way to relate to these thoughts differently so that they can better tolerate their anxiety. If you're struggling to identify anxiety's patterns in your child, or need help creating different ways for your child to relate to these worrisome thoughts, consider working with a therapist that specializes in anxiety. If you haven't learned about anxiety's traps yet, be sure to check out my video, 3 Anxiety Traps to Avoid, and stay tuned for future videos. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. As always, thank you for watching, and until next time, don't forget to breathe and enjoy this roller coaster ride of life that we call parenting.